Hello, my name is Luc Beaudoin. I'm professor in the Gender and Women's Studies program at the University of Denver. And I'm here to speak a little bit about my seminar that will be coming up called Uncovering Russian Poetics. I think when people think of Russian literature, they tend to think of the big novels by Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, things that are hundreds of pages to read. But in fact, Russian literature really is more premised on poetry than it is on narrative prose. And poetry has been a way for authors to speak to each other across generations, especially starting in the 1900s, maybe the later 1800s, up through today. Often talking about things that can't be spoken about otherwise. And what the seminar is going to focus on is a discussion about sexuality, specifically homosexuality, starting in the early 1900s, around 1911, with a major work called People of the Moonlight, which was the first text published in the Russian Empire that tried to normalize different sexual experiences. And we'll be progressing through Russian poets like Mikhail Kuzmin, Anna Akhmatova, who's a big name, and onwards through Marina Tsvetaeva, Anatoly Steiger, Valery Peredyeshin, and Slava Magutin. What we're going to be doing is looking at a conversation that they have with each other, often where they're criticizing their own sexual desires or praising their own sexual desires, conversations that they had up to the point where they committed suicide, or conversations where they're trying to rehabilitate their own personal experience and make it worthwhile. As you probably know, in Russia today, it's illegal to say anything positive about queerness in any public sphere. And so these conversations that we're looking back to that have spanned 100 years are a way of seeing how authors are able to continue, poets are able to continue, trying to discuss what it means to have an experience that's not standard, that's not heteronormative, and trying to see whether that experience can be made as part of the national cultural identity, or whether it's something that can only be done outside of the former Russian Empire, outside of the Soviet Union, perhaps in exile. The last writer I mentioned, Slava Magutin, is a case in point. He's in exile in Berlin and New York City, and his poetry, he is trying to rehabilitate Russian culture and look at it from a queer lens, but he can't do it back home. People like Marina Tsvetaeva, famous poet, her queerness is ignored and has been ignored since the Soviet Union. She committed suicide in 1981. What does she say in her poetry that we can uncover? That's going to be the focus of the seminar, is looking at effectively a queer poetics of silence and of speech across generations in Russian poetry. Thank you.